Anyways.
Alright, going live.
Oh, she's live. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. Tonight we're gonna have a lot of fun and we're gonna be doing a mid lap or a half lap or a cross lap, or it goes by a lot of different names, and so it's actually gonna be the joint in the middle here where the two boards cross but stay in the same plane. So it's kind of a fun, simple joint. Most of them are getting more and more difficult, and this one we're kind of taking it back to the basics and just kind of redoing a few things on it. Next week will be our last joint in this, so stay tuned for that. However, the first few minutes of every live, we're going to be going into some of the upcoming news. And if you want to find events near you, go to handtoolfinder.com. Actually, on there, I have a whole collection that I've been putting of every known woodworking event I know of coming up around the world. There's some in Australia. There's at least one in the UK. At least I think it was the UK. I know there's at least one in Canada. So if you know of an event that is not on the list, let me know. I would love to put it on there. But speaking of events, I'm actually going to be going to the big one. We're going to be doing Handworks this weekend in Amana, Iowa. At 3 p.m. if you're going to be coming, 3 p.m. on Friday, Rex and I will be doing a meetup at the Brew House. I don't know how you're supposed to, Brew House? It's spelled weird.
You're going to have a brouhaha at the Brew House?
Yes, we're going to have a good time. So come, Rex and I will both be there all weekend, Friday and Saturday, and it is going to be a ball of a time. Then, I don't have my list in front of me. Go to handtoolfinder.com. I got a whole calendar on there of all the events coming up. The next tool meet that I'm going to be at after that will be North Carolina, actually in Raleigh, North Carolina. There is an MWTCA meet out there, and that will be on the 16th, if I remember correctly, of September. And then the last weekend of September will be the national meet in Des Moines, Iowa, and so I'll be at those ones. I don't know where I would be next after. Actually, I don't think I have a tool meet directly on the list.
For what?
Ooh, I'll have to add them.
No, sir. The
Yes,
man's not home every
week. It is the season. They get less in the fall and winter. So, yeah, let's get to doing a joint. I need to come up with a different way of saying that. So we're going to be making the mid-lap joint, or the it's kind of like one of those Japanese where you've got a different name for every one of them. So what we've got is this one.
Oh, fix your
focus.
camera.
Let's do that. There you go. This one in the middle. So this board looks like it goes through and those butt into it, but when I turn it around, now this one looks like it goes through it and this one butts into it because there are two that just go past each other. So we're cutting out half into one and half into the other, and the two sandwich into the other, hopefully making a perfect joint. This one, you can see I left a little bit of a gap there. This one actually came out really nice. I like that one. So it's nice to see how they change over the years until, oh, that one didn't come out so nice. Oh, that's right. I remember that one. This is the time where I was talking or doing something and I got really sloppy and made a really big gap. That's like a solid 1/8 of an inch there. So yeah, let's have a little bit of fun. As with all of these, it all comes down to your layout. The more accurate your layout is, the more accurate your cut is going to be. If your layout is not accurate, your cut will not be either. We're going to be doing it in between boards 5 and 6 onto here. Now at this point, I have them all together in these two separate pieces. And I'm going to leave them like this. Because this will allow me to get far better marks. On this board, I need to know where in this board to put the marks. So I need to know the two cuts that need to go on the side of this. Whereas on this board, I need to know where they are this way. So I need to mark however far it is from the shoulder into this board, and then however far it is into the shoulder on this board. So I want to keep them together because this is going to make it so much easier to actually put those marks in. Let me move this camera so you can get a little bit better view on this. And if you have questions, throw them into the chat and I will get some of them. This one is a fairly quick joint, and so if we, I'm going to show a couple different ways of doing it because there's two sides of it. But if we get time at the end, we'll do a Q&A. But if you have questions particularly on what I've been doing, go ahead and throw those in the chat and Sarah will organize them. So on this one, I want to mark this board first. And what I need is two marks of where it will intersect on here. But before I do that any farther, I'm going to take this marker and I'm going to mark on here X. I need to remove this material here, and I'm going to take this off and move it over because I still want that 6 on there. But I don't want it right in the middle where I'm removing everything. So I'm going to move it right over here. And I'm going to put an X here because I need to remove that material. Having that X on there before I do anything else lets me know I need to make my marks on this side and I need to make my marks on this side. So first thing I'm going to do is put this in place. And I'm going to slide it up towards the end. And I'm going to make sure it runs into this shoulder of this tenon here. And it runs into that shoulder of the half flap there. And I should be able to line those two up. And I'm doing it up here close to the end so that everything becomes a little bit more aligned. And then I'm going to take my knife in here and I'm just going to nick the corner. Oop, I bumped it. Don't bump it. Do it a little closer. Make sure everything is right. Come on. Why are you off that? Oh, that's why. I tipped it slightly. There we go. So I'm going to reach in here. I'm going to put a nick right there. And then I'm going to come over to this side. Put a nick right there. And so now I have these two tiny little marks, 1 and 2, that show me the width of my cut. I'll transfer those across in a moment. Next thing I need to do is I need to put the marks onto this one. So for this one, I need to know where it goes this way. So I've got this shoulder here I can put in and slide that up against there. And with this in place, now I can put 1 tick mark in this corner and 1 tick mark in this corner. Now I'm not marking straight across with this because this isn't my square. I just need to know where do those marks go in this sidewall. So now let's take this whole thing apart. And this is where the fun becomes. One piece. Any questions so far?
Not specifically related to the.
Oh, we got a moment. What do we got?
Derek Robertson asked, when looking at a mortise chisel laying flat on the bench, how important is it that the width from left to right is constant and does not taper as it gets closer to the handle?
So I'm assuming mortise chisel, the width of it this way, tapering this way. If it tapers, that's not a problem. It is only the last 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch that really needs to be accurate.
Right. Are you going to stay on that camera?
What?
The widescreen?
Yeah.
You're just a little fuddy.
Is it?
Yeah.
Let me take a look at your moment. Let's take this apart. Out.
That or I need to get my eyes checked. It's one of the two.
Or both. Here. Let me make sure that should be focused right there.
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay. Here, I got to grab the right screwdriver. I thought I grabbed it earlier, but realized I did not because I've got a pocket hole in the other one. And I need to remove it. It's got a square head. So, 1 pocket hole. Spawn of the demon. Still turning.
Pause for a commercial break.
How the screw turns.
No, that's a scary movie.
How the screw turns?
The turning of the screw.
Is that a movie?
Isn't that what is?
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure. It creeped me out. If it's the movie I'm
Doesn't
thinking
take
of.
much.
No, I know. I don't do scary movies.
So, let's go back over to this one. Now I've got my tick marks in here. I'm going to put my knife right back into that tick mark, slide this up against, and mark across the face. And then I've got one more over here. Put the knife in the tick mark, clamp it on, mark across the face. Oop, don't slide. Light, medium, hard. Really hard. Hey look, we cut through the tape. So there's the width on that one. And this one, I'll do the same thing again over here. And the layout, I'm going to take my time and do this right. The cutting, I can be a little bit butchery on that, but the layout needs to be dead accurate. And I'm using a knife, not a pencil, because that makes things even more accurate. Now, Let me get a marking gauge out here. And I'm going to put that marking gauge to the middle of the board. And I'm not going to be terribly accurate with exactly what is the middle because it really doesn't matter. As long as I reference from the same face on both boards, that mark won't matter at all. And so on this one, my tape is my reference face. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to go from line. Actually, did that loosen up? It did. Oh no. Here, just let me fix that. The wheel on a wheel marking gauge is not supposed to turn.
So the wheel on the marking gauge does not go round and round.
The wheel on the marking gauge does not go round and round. And I am missing my Allen wrenches. Let's see if I've got one in here that will work. Probably not. So we're just going to have to tighten it down to finger tight and then make sure I roll against it, so I want to pull it towards me. That way it will naturally want to tighten itself up. Because you don't want it to turn. It's supposed to be a knife that slices through the wood rather than rolling, because if it rolls, it will slowly loosen up and it moves around on you. One of those interesting little things. Everyone thinks, oh, it's a wheel, it's supposed to turn. No, it's not supposed to turn. It's a knife. It just happens to have a knife on all sides. And then we're going to do the same thing on this one as well. But on this one, I'm also making sure I'm going off the same reference face, because as these pass through each other, they'll go this way. I want them both referenced off this front face, because this front face is what will be parallel between those. And then the last one we have to cut, I already did that side, is the marks coming down from the face. So I'll put the square on here, put the knife into that marking line, slide up against, and come across. Put it into the knife line, slide up against, and come across. Flip it over, reference on the same side, although this one really doesn't make that big a difference because we're not going that far. Knife into that mark, positive connections. Same thing on this one. Keep it on the reference side. And with this, we'll be accurate. I forgot to say, if you ever wanted to follow around with this joinery window, I actually have the SketchUp plans for it. I've been trying to turn it into a PDF, but just haven't had the time. I had a guy I was going to pay to do it, but then he quit on me. So I'm trying to find a new draftsman that will do plans, but haven't yet. So there's our layout. We need to do basically the same operation from one to the other. It's just one of them we're doing on the back side and one of them we're doing on the front side. But I'm going to show a couple different ways of doing it. I like to actually do most of the work in the vise itself. And I'll open it up, and I'm just going to put it down just a little bit into the vise, because I still want to be able to cut all the way down. It holds it in place. I could do it at the bench hook. A lot of people like to do that. And I'm going to be using a Kirkus saw. I could use the sash saw. It's a crosscut saw, but this one's a little smaller. So for a smaller cut, it works just fine. I'm going to pinch the far side of the board, let the saw slide on the thumbnail, and that will allow me to position it side to side. I'm just going to start nicking it right on this side, and then I'm going to draw it across the board. So I'm starting just cutting on this back corner, and then I'm going to work my way across, staying right on that line. Now, if you're just beginning, you may want to stay away from that line and then come back to it. I always like to cut right on the line whenever possible. And now I'm going to cut down to that cut mark on one side. Now you do the other side too. And the same thing over here on this one. Established. Now we cut. A little bit more on the back side. There's that one. Second verse, same as the first. That's a lot of woodworking. It's just doing the same operation over and over again, hoping that it's better this time. Start on the far side, work the cut back across. And And yes, the word across has a T in it, much to the chagrin of the commenters. One more. Hey, there we go. So now we're down to depth. Now we need to remove the waste in between. And I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it basically the same way to begin with. Only one I'm going to do completely with the chisel. And the other one I'm going to do with the router plane. Because the router plane's fun. Oh, I get to use the new sexy chisel. Yes, I have feelings for it. Why are you looking that way, babe?
I'm rolling my eyes at you.
For those of you who haven't seen, I did a short on this video, on this chisel. It's made by Zinwu. It's a really high-grade new steel, but with a titanium body and a Shoshogibon handle. Just absolutely gorgeous. Is that a super chat?
It is a super chat. Clockman says, coffee money, Sarah, for you.
Yeah.
Clockman, have you not watched enough? I appreciate
she does the hot
coffee.
chocolate.
I do hot chocolate.
Does he have a question?
No,
Do you have
not.
a mom chat? Mom question? Joke? Okay, I'll let her talk.
I'm trying to find it, so give me a second. Here, I'm going to give you a question while I do it.
Okay, what we got?
Dennis Meko wants to know, is there a reason you made the joints in the particular order you did?
I tried to make them in an order of simplest to more difficult. And more or less, they just kind of take it step by step, such as like the half lap is basically a half of a tenon on both sides. And then you have the saddle joint, which is a tenon and an open mortise. And then you've got the mortise, which is a sealed mortise. And so each one is a step more difficulty. But there really is no important way that you have to do one in any order. You can do them in whatever order you want to do.
All right, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Why did the bald guy get tattoos of rabbits on his head?
Why?
Because they look like hairs.
Got it.
Is that a little too close to
Yeah,
home for you?
Yeah. I still love you, babe.
What'd you say?
I still love you.
You better watch out. I don't take a Sharpie to your head.
So I'm starting about halfway down, aiming towards the sky. And we're going to go halfway down to that. And it's better to aim up and away, because if something splinters off, it's going to go wild. And it's better for it to go wild up than wild down and up past where you're going. Now this particularly is curly white oak, curly red oak, so it is really wild stuff, so it's going to be difficult and fun. And each time I'm just going to go down halfway farther. And I'm not going too much into the other side. And until I get down to the point where I really can't go halfway again. This one's about halfway to the line. I'm going to stop there, turn this around, do the same thing on this side. And I always want to work in towards the middle so I'm not blowing out anything on the other side. If I keep going and just blow out the other side, it's going to chip off pieces on the back side here. And we don't like chipping off the back side. Halfway down the line, still aiming up. Halfway down to the line again. Let me see if I can get the camera down on this angle here. I do that. Yeah, we're rethinking what we want to do for lives after this series. So if anyone has something particular, whether we do lives or I change up and do something like a Thursday video on Tuesdays. I don't know. Maybe I was thinking about doing a joinery video each Tuesday or something of that nature. Because the lives are fun, and I like to do a Q&A every now and then, but they're not. It used to be that a lot of people watched them, and now very, very few people watch them. So you guys are really awesome because you're the guys who actually watch them. Or women, sorry. I have to stop myself from saying that. So let's go back to this. You can see right here it went just a hair below the line, but that's okay because this is going to be covered up. And in this case, I'm actually going to go right into the line. I'm going to tap it just a little ways in. Oop, that one went past. I should have gone halfway to the line again. And the middle of this really doesn't matter too much. So I'm just aiming up a little bit still. And running through to the other side. Still intentionally aiming a little bit high. Now what I can do is I can put the chisel on here and I can see where is it hitting. What am I still running into? I can also grab it with the stabbing form. Oop. Whoa, that's out of focus. That's better. So I'm going to grab the chisel, both thumbs forward, and I'm going to stab into it. Takes a little bit of skill, but it's actually rather impressive how flat you can get it to cut. Let's turn it around, do the same thing from the other side. In this case, I need to go back down to that line because I didn't go all the way to the line on this side. Into the line. Into the line. Let's do that stabby stabby. This allows you to hit that big stuff on the top, but then still have the control to do the flat in the middle. And it becomes pretty obvious where the high spots are. And when it's no longer obvious, you use the chisel. It has a good side on it. You can put it on one corner and lay it down and see if it touches both corners at the same time. In this case, I'm actually running into this out here, so I'm going to use my square. And I have a bit of a raise here. That's looking good. And that's looking pretty good. I got a little bit of a hump here. So.
You found a hunk?
I found a hump.
You found a hump or a hunk?
Hump.
A pump?
A hump.
Oh. It's not hump day.
It is not. I'll clean up this shoulder just a little bit. Get rid of the junk in the corner. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I still have not sharpened this chisel.
We're not surprised.
It is incredibly durable. So not only am I checking across, but I'm also going to turn it corner to corner and make sure it doesn't run into anything that way either. And that looks to be pretty good. The nice thing about this joint is that the inside does not need to be beautiful, and this face here does not need to be beautiful. So if you chip out a little bit, it's not a problem because it's going to get covered with the other one. Now we're going to flip it around and do it this one. But this one, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. This one I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to come down halfway to the line. And I'm going to hit it with a chisel. I'm going to aim up. I'm just getting rid of the majority of the waste. Halfway to the line again. And halfway to the line one more time. This one I'm going to aim down a little more, not quite straight up. There we go. I flip it around. I could do all of it with the router, but it's nice to get rid of the big waste and then come back in with the router and clean it up.
Is it nice?
Halfway down, aim up, big whack whacks. Woo, that almost took it all off. Halfway in.
Halfway there.
Whoa, we're halfway there. Favorite song of Sara and mine. We accidentally did karaoke on a cruise ship. The two of us sang that.
Accidentally.
Well, I wasn't intending to do karaoke.
We need to get points to win the prizes on the cruise ships.
Yes. We go to cruise ships for the game shows. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let me get into this a little closer so you can see this, is I'm going to try and hit, let's fix the camera so it doesn't fall. Down, there we go. Let's actually get it in focus. There we go. So I'm going to try and find, I have the high spot here, and I have it set up to take off a good bit off the high spot, but I'm not going to go all the way through. I'm just going to go to about a ½ inch away from the other side. And then come around to this side, and I can go back. And now I've gotten everything at this height. Now one of the cool things about a Stanley plane is that there's slop in this. It goes back and forth. And I can run it up to the top. But in this case, I actually want to run it all the way down to the bottom of this groove. There's a little bit of space in there. Then I'm going to loosen the nut, and the blade falls down by the thickness of a shaving. And so now I can come back in here, and I'm going to start out this side at that thickness. And now that I've gotten this side set to that thickness, I can come back around here where I'm a little more comfortable, and I can go through. And I'm getting a really nice clean surface because I'm only taking off the amount I need. So then I'm going to roll this again to the bottom of the slot, loosen, tighten, and we're ready to go again. And I can just repeat this process, and because of that little bit of slop in there, I know that every time I'm cutting, I'm just cutting one shaving worth. That gives me a really nice clean cut. Even in this twisted grain of curly white oak. Do it again. Down, loosen, tighten. Let's see how close I am to the line. I got about another 2 or 3 passes. I want to make sure I'm referencing off both sides. If I'm only referencing on one, I want to have all the down pressure here. Otherwise, it's going to want to rock down.
Just because you're using it right now, I'm going to ask this question out of order.
What's that?
LJ wants to know, can James explain to us how to use the stop on that router?
What stop are you talking about? If you're talking about, there's a little foot, this thing here, that goes down in front so you can do grooves. It is one thing that is theoretically possible to do. But in practice, it's almost impossible. It's one of those things that Stanley made and advertised, hey, you can do this with it. And in theory, yes, and if you have really good control, you can, but in reality, it really doesn't work. I'm hoping that's the stop you're thinking about. If not, let me know. I think it's the next level after this one. I'll be at depth.
LJ says yes. That answered the
Yep,
question.
that's it. I should really do a video on it sometime because it's kind of one of those things that can be done, and I've played with it, but in reality, it just doesn't quite work. So now, rather than moving all the way down to the bottom, I'm going to do a half shaving because I'm almost there. And so rather than being at the top or the bottom, I'm going to go halfway in between, loosen, let it drop, tighten up. And this takes a really fine last level shaving. Let's clean it all up from this side. The nice thing about using a router plane is I know that everything on this is perfectly flat and consistent. But you'll notice it took about the same amount of time from one to the other. This one looks a little cleaner than this. This one probably would look cleaner and straighter grain. But in this crazy squirrely stuff, it's not the same. Just getting everything in the corner. It's often the stuff in the corner that stops two pieces from going together. Okay, now for the moment of truth. I gotta make sure these are going together in the right direction. So this one goes on there, and then half lap, and then you. So they go together in this direction. So let's see, first chance, do they actually go together? Probably not. It's almost impossible, but miracles happen. So, well, first off, let's see if the groove is wide enough for this. And it is ever so slightly off on that one. And I think I can see that. And then this one.
Let's see.
Well, that's the one I just checked. This one, yeah, it's ever so slightly off on that too. And I can see just a little bit of the ridge where I didn't cut right on the line. I cut just inside here. So let's shave off that little bit. Love a good, truly sharp chisel. And it's just riding in the very edge of that knife line. Let's see. Does that get it in there? Oh yeah. That just slides in. But I want to make it even tighter. So what we're going to do, I'm going to grab a file, put it back in here. I have a square file I can just push against that wall. Same thing on this side. Just taking off a little bit. And yeah, see that just slides down in there nice and tight. That's the fit I'm looking for on that one. Now, onto this one. This one has, yep, a little bit on this lip that I had. Just a little ways away from that knife line. Not by much. And I actually undercut this one a little bit, so it might show a hair of a gap on the outside. But we'll see. What'd that give me? That's good. That's good. Okay. Now, let's put these together. Let's see, it would have been this one and this one. Yep, those are. Do they go?
Ooh, that looks snug.
I'll take it. That one's about as tight as they get. That's Yeah, that's pleasing. That's
You made
That's
this
glue
one
ready.
smaller, like the window itself, than the other one.
a little bit. I mean, I've done them each time a little bit different size. So I made a big one last time. The first one I made out of smaller stock. Smaller stock is easier to put together. The bigger the stock is, the harder it is to put together. And in this case, this one, I decided to do it at the same size stock as this, but then just shrink it all down. So we put this together, and it's going to go this one, and then it's, no, I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? Why don't you ask me a question while I'm thinking through this?
You want a question? Okay. Warren Munn wants to know, what type of wood would you use for making a mitre box? He's rebuilding an old one for display.
For making a mitre what?
Box.
What type of wood?
Yeah.
Anything. For that type of thing, wood doesn't matter. Whatever looks good to you. I think I put these together in the wrong orientation. Yeah, because it's one of those things that, honestly, when it comes down to your choice of lumber, is whatever you want it to look like. So, have fun.
You have another question?
Sure.
David Walcott asks, what's a good brand of diamond stone?
DMT is the gold standard. I made this one in a slightly different funky order, so I got to remember how I got to put this one on here first, and then I can put that one in there. DMT is the gold standard, and it's the one I use, and it's the one that most professionals use if they use diamond plates. But nowadays, a lot of the cheaper brands are actually pretty darn decent. So you don't need an amazing diamond plate. I mean, it's nice to have bragging rights, but it's not necessary. So we have one more joint to do to pull this together, but you can see the size of the window in comparison. Yeah, I'm liking that. I think I'm going to have a bit of a gap on this mitered half lap. But other than that, it's looking really good. I'm liking that.
So
It's coming together.
What one do we have left?
What's that?
What one do we have left?
The last one we have is the mitered spline.
Spline.
And so the goal is next time we're going to miter the two pieces, miter the two corners, and then glue up this whole thing. And hopefully with it glued up, we'll cut and drive in the mitered spline. And then the last video will be cleaning this up. We're actually going to take a plane to one side. I like to plane one side flat and smooth, and then keep the other side rough, so I have a comparison of what was the surface smoothness before I put it all together. So yeah, one more joint. And this is the tricky one. This is the last joint, because up to this point, these can all look good with 1, 2, or 3 boards. But once you get this last one in, everything becomes so much harder, and making sure everything lines up is almost impossible. And it becomes really, really tricky and very annoying, because suddenly everything that's looking really, really good doesn't. And it's a whole soul crusher. So yeah, this one's going to be fun. So we got a few minutes left. What questions do we have?
So, okay, back to Warren's question about wood for mitre box. He wants to know hardwood or softwood?
Whatever you want. The softer the wood is, the more it's going to dent over time. So the harder the wood is, the more durable it's going to be in general. But honestly, you can make it out of a soft pine if it's something that's not going to be, bumped into much. It's a nice little box. Now, if you're looking for something like a toolbox, something heavy and sturdy, then go with something at least moderately hard, something like a cherry or harder. But if you're giving like a gift box, it could be just about anything. So, yeah. When it's something like the size of a gift box, it has way more to do with its looks than its durability or function. So, whatever looks good. What's next?
Axel Cruz asked, What hand tool can do a groove on round or any specific hand tool for grooving round and concave?
That's a chisel. Anytime you're making a curved groove, it's something you carve, basically. Now you can get what is called a carriage maker's plow. It's a plow plane, so like a combination plane. But rather than having a long sole, the sole is much smaller, and the sole may only be 2 inches or less in the middle, and that will mean that it can rotate and it can turn around generous curves. But most of the time, if you have a curved something, you carve it. And that sounds crazy and difficult, but in practice and reality, it's really not. You don't take it all out at one time like you would with a power router. I mean, even with a power router, if you're doing a big thing, you do it in steps. Whereas with chisels, you just do it slowly. You do little bit by little bit. You make lines, you mark exactly where you need things to be, and you hit those lines and don't move off them. Sounds complicated, but in practice, once you try it once or twice, it actually goes pretty well. I have a video making a blood groove in a cutting board, and I did that with the gouge. The other answer is you can use a scratch stock. Do I have one here? Yes, I do. So a scratch stock is a tool like this, and it has a little scratch. It has basically a card scraper in here, and you can make that whatever shape you want if you want to do beading or things of that nature. And then with this, you can run around the surface and you can scratch it out. And so it works just like a card scraper, taking a little bit after a little bit after a little bit, and it works out pretty well. And I've got a couple of videos on making scratch stocks. For people who do stringing, in other words, inlaying a wood that is a lighter color usually that goes right along the outside edge. Scratch stock is a great way to do that because you can go down tapers and you can make curves and you can make it exactly what you want. What's next?
Dennis Meko asks, does James ever use a ruler to measure wood?
Sometimes. Yeah, it's one of those things that if I am transferring a measurement from one thing to another, it is always better to take the board I'm going to be cutting over to the item and mark it on the reality of the piece. Because if I take a tape measure or a ruler, all my rulers are over by you, and I measure one thing, then there's the ability to be off on that measurement. And then I take it over to the piece I'm going to put it on, and there's the ability to be off again. And so whatever your error is in measuring, it's double that in transferring it. So whenever you can, use the actual piece to mark it off. When I made Sara's dresser, I took a stick upstairs, and it had to fit. Well, originally, we were going to put it between the door and the bathroom, and so I made a stick that was the length that the dresser would have to be. That's its maximum length. And that was the only measurement I took, and even that wasn't with a measurement. It was a stick marked at this length. And so I made the top was that. Well, I wanted 1 inch from the top, and so that means the carcass outside dimensions are about 1 inch less than that, and I didn't even have 1 inch, I just moved it in about that much. I put a marking gauge, and that's how far in I go. And so everything was based off of that one mark. I blocked off everything else on the box. It is this size by this size, and so I cut the leg. I want it to be this tall, minus the thickness of the top. So I had my piece of the top on there, and I want it to be about that tall. I made a mark on the board, and I cut one leg. And then I used that leg to make the other 4 so that they're all the same length. And then I wanted it to be so far out from the wall, about that. Well, I put the 2 legs against each other, and then I came out this way, put a board into it, and I marked, that's where I want in between the legs. And that is the depth of the dresser. What's the measurement number? I don't care. Number doesn't matter at all. Number only matters if I want to give it to you, and you're not here. You don't have the stick that I marked. So that's, you can make everything without ever using a tape measure. And some of the most accurate marks you'll ever make do not actually take measurement. So, yeah. What's next?
Idle Hand said, Sara, does he bring tools to bed with him at night sometimes?
No, but Sara does. She'll take a tool to bed.
You're the tool. All right, this is the last question I have been given.
Cool.
So,
Then we'll wrap it up.
Robert Liebarger asked for a first pair of hand screw clamps. What size would you recommend? Any size, generally too large or too small to be useful?
Generally, no. The 12-inch ones have the most strength. The ones I use the most are the 6-inch, like this size. I use these things all the time, and most of mine are like the 6 to 8-inch size. These are incredibly useful, and I use them almost every day. But the 12-inch are the ones when I really need to crank something down. Those will be the beasts to put it down. They have so much more leverage. So if you're limited by like an 8-inch, 8-inch is a good general use. But you'll find over time that you want more. You can never have enough of them, and they'll multiply, and you'll eventually find the set keeps growing, and you'll eventually have enough. Well, until the next project. Yeah, 8 is probably the most versatile size of all of them, though. So, is that it?
That's it.
Cool. Well, we'll wrap this up next week. Hopefully, we will be doing the last joint in this, but we're going to be doing handworks this weekend, so who knows how I'll be feeling on Tuesday. So stay tuned, but we'll have some fun with that. But I think that'll do it for now. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.